many people who do focus on money lack such emotional intelligence, and that they can't
Yeah.
have conversations like this or even think about these things because they don't go through any of those hardships, and they don't even consider anyone else who's going through those hardships.
Right. It just builds their ego and they start to think that they don't need anything else but money. But what they don't
Mm-hmm.
realize, sometimes these people are the most depressed people, even if they do have all this money, because they realize,
Right.
what else is there? I'm not happy yet.
Right.
I have all this money, I have a mansion, and I'm still not happy
Right.
because
And I that brings to mind, I don't know if you've heard of this story that came out recently with one of the pastors of Hillsong. It's a very large church. It's an international church. This guy, he's a pastor named Carl Lentz, and he's connected to Justin Bieber, to a whole bunch of celebrities, Olivia Munn. And you would think, like, being such a Christian guy, that he would be doing the right thing, but he cared more about money, and he ended up cheating on his wife. Um, and clearly he has like a lot of mental illness issues going on. But like, it's just so ironic to me. Like, you claim to be preaching about Christ, but he would have been against you having any money at all. He would have been
yeah,
against you hanging out with only celebrities, and you lose sight of what the purpose and the vision is, and you lose sight of who you should be working towards to be,
exactly.
and you only focused on the money, and now you've landed yourself in a situation where you've hurt so many more people. um
Yeah,
so
that gives a really bad name for people looking up to someone like that and
yeah.
seeing what he did, you know?
Yeah, same thing with my pastor. Well, not same thing, but similarly speaking, in that he says that he grew up with not a lot of money, but he gets to live in Porter Ranch right now behind a gated community because he's scared for his life. Even though, like, his congregation, he has security. My own
Where's the
pastor
faith?
has, right? Like, if you think God has your back, then why do you have security
That's
following
what
you
I'm saying.
around?
Yeah.
um right, and he has money. He has a nice house. He sold his motorcycle, but it cost him like $30,000. Like, I thought Jesus was against stuff like this. Like, how
Wow.
can you be preaching that and then buying all these things? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And then your poor congregation members who are barely able to get by, you're asking them to tithe.
Yeah, then
You
you
know
see
what I
churches
mean?
that take up the whole block, like these huge, beautiful churches, and then there's like homeless
Absolutely.
across the street. And it's like,
Yeah, or
where's the
like they're
money
they're
going?
pushed out. It's a very big criticism I have for my church, is that they don't even have a food pantry for the homeless. They don't let the homeless even hang around there because it's such a
Oh,
nice community, and they don't want to bring any bad
oh,
people around. And it's so ironic to me because I look at their lights, and I know exactly how much they cost, because, like, I've worked in the theater industry, and they cost like $30,000, $50,000 a piece, and they have like 200 lights. Like, how is it that you're able to afford such great technology to make your worship service look so fancy, but you can't even afford to help the people here in your community? No, you're asking people to donate socks. Socks. They had a
okay.
sock drive for the
Oh,
homeless. Yeah, and I'm like, you guys, you send out so much
come
money
on.
to missionaries, but then you don't even help your community here. Like, the perspective on money in the evangelical church is so problematic,
Yeah, it seems
and it
very corrupt.
it
But
is, and
it's
like,
not only just Christianity. Like with us, like in Saudi Arabia, we believe they're so like out of line because they have these
mm,
huge, like our prophet taught not to go to the limit, like with everything. Like the first mosque that
mm,
was built over there was just mud and it's
oh
very
really?
yeah, just very simple,
Wow.
And like you go to Saudi Arabia now and there are these huge buildings and almost
Yeah.
towers, and the mosque over there now is just like humongous that they spend so much money on. But then you have
Mm-hmm.
Arabs and Muslims suffering a lot all over the world, and they do nothing to
Mm-hmm.
help. It's all
Yep.
about building the bigger tower to be bigger than the next
Who
city
has the
over.
tallest parapet in the entire
Exactly. Who has the
community?
biggest building? We have power. And it's like, it gets back to the all of you're worshiping like money, you're
Performative.
worshiping material
Yeah.
things, you're worshiping this life rather than
Yeah.
fulfilling your purpose, and
Yeah,
it's
it's
deceiving.
really, it's very wild to me because, I look at the first century churches and they're very much more about community and helping each other. If someone was struggling with something, they would help them. But, I look at churches now and it's always like, give us your money and we'll just send it outside of this community because, you'll be fine. God's got your back. But it's like, I know he's got my back, but you're supposed to be part of that plan. You're supposed to be part of it.
They put
Is it
their faith solely on that and not don't act.
right? That's why, it really bothers me seeing like the practice of Christianity in today's culture. It's very anti so many things, even though it preaches like, oh, love people, care about the least among us, but don't do it up close. Like, don't get too close to them. Don't accept them in. Don't go out and actually help them.
Do you think
Let's
they're
just
getting
build our.
more influenced by society to change teachings and religion?
Mm,
Like more because they want to adapt to modern times rather than sticking to the traditional teachings?
I see a couple of churches who do that, and there are more contemporary churches that are starting to follow it, where it's just to appease or to attract to
Yeah,
the
yeah,
demographics.
what I
But it
mean.
all comes down to like, are you just using smoke and lights to do that, or are you using the actual
Actual
message?
scripture.
Yeah, it usually comes down to like, oh, it's because their worship facility is so nice, it's so big, and it's
Yeah.
got
Ooh, I
such
want to
nice
come here.
lighting. Yeah, look at the seats. The seats are really nice, and they have donuts here. They have a cafe here. Like, they have a bookstore. But you see all these fancy things, and you don't realize like, oh, shouldn't this all be going towards the people that they're actually saying that they should reach out to? It just doesn't
Exactly.
add up.
That pretty much sums it up. We've been
Yep.
on it for a while.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
want to
there's so much
recommend.
to talk about.
Yeah, I know. I want to recommend this book. Have you ever read it? Oh, you can't. It's backwards. But Jesus, Man, Messenger, Messiah. It's the Islamic period, like perspective, but it's a really
Oh,
good one.
okay.
It's in IRA, and it really like it goes through Paul. It goes through um the Gospels and our teachings and everything. So
Mm-hmm.
I recommend it. It's like
Is that how you got into like looking into all of this stuff? Did someone like recommend it to you, or?
yeah, it was the how I got into like just religion as a whole was well, obviously I was born Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
My parents are Muslim, but I wasn't really practicing until I was like 28. So it's like 2 years ago, not that long ago.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, I wasn't praying or
I was
anything.
gonna say, like, I was trying to think about back to the time when we were at parties together, and I was like, I don't remember Yosef being like this before.
No, I wasn't like that at all. I was more because that's why I can see the perspective of people who um, are just all about money or about pleasing other people and going
Mm-hmm.
through hardships and stuff. Because I went through all these things, and
Yeah.
that's what led me to like, okay, I mean, I should look for purpose, and because I was lost, like, what's my purpose here? Why am I here? And obviously,
Mm-hmm.
I went to Islam first because
Mm-hmm.
that's my home religion. I never read the Quran before that. It's just like bits and pieces
Oh.
that I learned like from my parents.
Mm-hmm.
I read that, or I listened to it actually on Audible, and
Oh,
it hit me
nice.
hard. I was like, "Wow, this is amazing!" But after
Mm-hmm.
that, I looked into Christianity. I looked into
Mm-hmm.
that's why I know some of the Bible. I've gone through it. I have a Bible here actually.
Oh,
It has
wow.
it
I'm
has
so impressed.
it has King James and
Mm-hmm.
NIV all in one book, so you can compare like the
Mm,
two.
yeah.
Um, so I have that. I studied that, and then I looked into like other religions and stuff, Hinduism, but I couldn't get
Mm-hmm.
past like not to disrespect them or anything, but I couldn't get past the multiple manifestations of God in everything. I was just that means he would have to be in
Uh, everything.
literally everything, like disgusting things. So
That's like a pantheistic view, right?
yeah, exactly. but they say it's one God, so it's confusing.
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
get Buddhism. It's not really a religion; it's more like a lifestyle philosophy. So,
Yeah.
anyways, I started to study more, and then I just going onto YouTube and watching. I don't know if you ever heard of Speaker's Corner.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so people go to Speaker's Corner and they just talk to each other about anything. And I just started watching the religious ones. I was like, oh, this is great. And I can
Oh,
hear both
okay.
perspectives, like
Mm-hmm.
arguments from all sorts of religions. And
Mm-hmm.
I looked into it even more. And then I started getting way more books like this one, Jesus is
Mm.
Crucifixion. And I just started reading. And I'm like, I want to do this. I want to talk to people about religion and compare this. I've been doing that like the last year or so.
Wow, that's
Just,
incredible.
yeah, just studying and whatever. And then I was like, I need to make a channel where I can actually, it's hard to like go out and meet people and talk, especially after COVID. It's like I've just been stuck here.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was like, I need to reach to more people, like talk to more people about
Mm.
it. So that's why I
Yeah,
decided to make the channel. And yeah, and then
that's awesome.
thankfully I got, you on and some other people to really talk about it. And I'm really glad you kind of connect with like a lot of things that I was saying from as
Yeah,
well. And of course, you
yeah.
have your own perspective, like you're a Christian, but that's what I wanted, like for us to get along and talk about our different perspectives and what we agree on, what we don't agree on, and do it in a
Mm.
just way. Like in Speaker's Corner, they start getting people showing faces, and yelling,
It's because
and
they make it personal, and it's like
yeah, I think it's
it's an
personal.
attack on their own faith, and it's like if your faith isn't strong enough to handle this kind of thing, you need to work on yourself a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all about, I feel like, just ego winning the argument instead of getting the point across of what you're
Yeah,
like. If you really want to call people to your religion, that's not going to work. Like,
yeah,
they're going to go
absolutely.
further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I used to be that kind of person too. I was like very egotistical about it. And I took all of the different perspectives very personally because, it's like an attack on my identity. And like, that was just like a lack of understanding of my own faith and understanding who I am as a person and just being able to listen to somebody else. Like you just have to be able to listen to another perspective and say like, hey, like if you believe that, like you're valid in believing it. I disagree, but I'm not going to tell you like that you're a horrible person. I'm not going to call you all these names
Right. And I'm
because
not
I
going to get
wouldn't want that done
offended.
to
Yeah.
me. Yeah, exactly. And
If
yeah,
you have a firm foundation, it's like, okay, you believe that.
yeah,
That's fine.
exactly. Yeah, Speaker's Corner gets wild. Some of them I'm like, oh, I think they should have cut like a long time ago.
Yeah, that's why I kind of stopped watching because it was getting me kind of frustrated because
Same.
they'll say some things and I'm like, that's just so wrong. And it's just like it gets me mad and I'm just sitting there watching it like I can't. So I've been watching
Yeah.
like more mellow things. And
Mm, yeah.
actually recently I've been watching a lot about end times sorts of things.
Oh, okay.
And it's so
Don't watch Left
interesting.
Behind. I'm just telling you right now. It's like if it's
Oh,
got to do with Christianity, don't watch any of the Left Behind stuff. Just don't.
okay. I
Because
will.
it literally is all based on the rapture and like it's the rapture doesn't even exist in the Bible. So
Yeah, it's not a like we don't get into the rapture type of thing where certain people are saved and other people aren't. But I think Christianity and Islam does have a lot of similarities besides that with end
mhm.
times, like Antichrist. Do you know about Gog and Magog at all?
Say it again.
Gog and Magog?
Yes, I have heard of that.
Okay. Because there's like we have a big thing on Gog and Magog, like they're a big
Oh,
part about end of time um
oh,
prophecies
interesting.
and yeah,
Okay, I
I
might need
mean
to look into that.
yeah, it's so interesting. And it's like I got stuck on it. Just like there's this one speaker, his name is Imran Hussein, and he specializes in end times.
Hmm.
And he goes all in about Gog and Magog and Antichrist. His belief is that Antichrist, or we call him Dajjal, which means mass
Hmm.
deceiver in Arabic.
Hmm. Hmm.
He's already kind of behind the scenes. He's not like
Hmm.
visible, but he's here
Hmm.
already. And it's like it's
Mm,
really interesting because it makes a lot of sense about he's controlling everything. And yeah, I'm probably gonna
yeah.
get way too into it if I go into it.
No, we could do a whole other video on that if you really wanted to, because I
Yeah.
that was a Revelations and like end times was something that I extensively studied when I was in high school.
Oh yeah.
I was very interested in it. Yeah, and it's crazy. There's some crazy stuff, but I definitely agree with you. I definitely also think that there's already an antichrist who's been
Yeah.
working in the back. Yeah, because it would make a lot of sense for a lot of things that have been happening. But as to who it is, I'm not like I don't have someone in mind
No,
particularly
I don't have
because
like
like
I don't think he's like visible like to anybody. I think he's more just
oh
yeah, he's more just controlling things behind the scenes as
I
like
see.
deceiving mankind. And I think it's you probably not agree with it, but I think it's like modern Western philosophy that's invading
Mm-hmm,
most of the world, taking people
mm-hmm,
away from religion and
mm-hmm,
replacing it with the secular idea where we make the rules, government, not God.
mm-hmm.
You know, they're trying to replace God with our government rules. You know, like we decide what's good, what's
Oh, I
bad,
see.
not religion.
Mm-hmm,
Like get away from religion. And I believe
mm-hmm,
that has something to do with Antichrist. That's his whole mission is to get people away from God and religion and to, you know, to think that this is the
mm-hmm.
only life and to only seek material gains and all this and the mass deception
Yeah,
that's going on. So I don't know.
yeah. That very materialistic way of life.
Yeah, and
I
it
feel
goes.
that.
It's not only here in America, but even in Middle East. They
It's
all look
all
up.
over.
Yeah, they all look up to the West as, oh, this is how we should be living. Like, we should just do whatever we want, and who cares
Yeah.
about rules and laws, whatever. You know.
Yeah, I meet too many Christians who want to be like Jeff Bezos, and I go, he is like he's like the opposite of like who you should want to be like. Why do you want to be like someone like that who has like all this money just because he has money? Like that's just crazy. People
Yeah,
care way too
exactly.
much about like the success of this life versus, doing actual good.
Yeah, they don't
It's
worry about
yeah.
the afterlife anymore. They think it's just an afterthought. You know.
Yeah, and like they don't care about other people. They only care about themselves and their own gain and their own, like
It's what I want. Who cares about anyone else? Like,
yeah, yeah. It's very I mean, that's a very like Western point of view, that whole individualistic, like it's all
yeah.
about me kind of thing.
And that's conflicting
It's
because not everyone thinks the same. Like
yeah.
even like man, even on abortion, right? No
Hmm.
one's two people are not going to agree on that. Like
Yeah. Especially Christians.
right, so which one's right, which
Oh
one's wrong,
man.
and it will never end. Who's
Yeah.
right, who's wrong? Like if you're
Yeah.
going to base it just on your individual subjective
Mhm.
morality, you can say
Mhm.
anything you want, and who says you're right? You know, and like
Yeah.
who says you're
I,
right? So
I
that's
just
it's conflict.
I have a huge like issue with Christians who use the topic of abortion and the topic of the gay community as their reasons for supporting a political figure. Like that's neither of those things were things that Jesus even talked about. So why are you supporting politicians who those are their main platforms? Like
Yeah, that
it
shouldn't be
doesn't make
your
any
agenda.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, like and again, it's like you see it's always Christians outside an abortion clinic too. Like it just doesn't make it like why are you doing this? There are
That's just
homeless
just too
people.
extreme, man.
Yeah, like there are orphans, there are kids who could be adopted, there are like so many things that you could be doing with your time and yet you're wasting it on this. Like
Yeah, if you really want to
yeah.
stop abortion or whatever, then do it by preaching or, getting people into the
Yeah.
religion first. But
But also teaching, sexual health, like making sex like this, it becomes this thing, at least in evangelical Christianity, where it's like it's a bad thing. You can't have sex. It's bad if you have sex. And so when people do get married and they have sex, they automatically, most of them, at least from my experience, most of them still feel like they're committing a sin, even in marriage.
really,
Yes, because that's how indoctrinated evangelicals are. There is a whole purity culture
so
in
sex is just bamboo.
it's yeah, it's like the most taboo thing.
I
And
think that's an issue because the whole it's maybe they comes from Paul saying don't get married,
I
but
mean maybe.
but with us it's like marriage is so key because it keeps you away from abortions, and it keeps you away from multiple mistresses that you know you can't control it. Like it keeps you away from diseases. It keeps you away from motherless or fatherless homes. It builds a better unity. And if you have strong families in all these
Mm-hmm.
neighborhoods, strong families, that's what
Right, right,
builds a community. If you're gonna start
right.
separating and divorce and all this stuff and abortions and fatherless homes, like America leads the world in fatherless homes, and 40% of those kids grow up in either doing drugs, um, or something just bad that wouldn't
Yeah,
happen
it's very tough, but like, the way that Christians perceive it becomes this extreme of like, well, you can only it's to the point of like, if you even how do I say it, if you even think about sex, it's like you're already committing a sin. And so when people get married finally, and it's like, oh well, now sex is okay within marriage, it becomes this like uncomfortable thing because you've been brought up your
You've
entire
never
life
thought
that it's
about it.
so wrong. Yeah, and so there's so many people that struggle with sex inside marriage in the Christian faith, because like they don't have a healthy view of sex. And that's why like this whole thing about abortion, it's like, well, you're not teaching proper sexual health for people. They don't perceive sex in a good way.
Right,
And
but if they got, I think that's why you'll probably disagree with it. I don't know, but I think that's why people should get married earlier. They should get married at like 18, to be honest, because it will just keep you away from
mm,
that. Like if you don't, like every woman or man, if they're
mm-hmm,
through, if you last way too long, you're gonna end up having sexual relations with people. You just can't. It's hard to control that unless you have, and it's better. I mean, anyone would agree
mm-hmm,
it's better if you just stick to one person for most of your life
yeah,
because it will eliminate abortions for the most part. It will eliminate transmitting of sexual diseases or transmitting disease. It will eliminate um, deserting of the father leaving. It will eliminate the mother leaving. It will eliminate so many things if people just put an emphasis on. It's not about how many partners you can have. It's just about getting a partner and just stick it
mm-hmm,
to, and being commit. Like that's what I was alluding to earlier. Is like people, because of media, because of all these things, they think that it's all about how many sexual partners can I have. That's what makes me a cool person, a better person, and that's
mm,
what leads to all these things. And what's so wrong about with getting married? They look at it as so taboo. Maybe it's that, again, Paul, I don't know, but they look at it as like they rather
mm-hmm,
spend the most of their life not married, right? And not even having a boyfriend or girlfriend, just sleeping around. And they think that's better than getting married and sticking with one person. So to me,
mm,
if we stick to the religious ways of our religion, at least, they're trying to get
mm-hmm,
married pretty young and
mm-hmm,
not like forcing marriage, although that's wrong, but like the parents being involved, and they can choose who they want, the kids, but you be involved and say, oh, this is a good person for you. Let's match it up, and hopefully you live a good life. And if you want to get a divorce, whatever, fine, you can do that later on in life. But it's better.
mm,
It's better than just letting them out there and be like, yeah, choose who you want, and
mm-hmm,
they they sleep with someone they shouldn't have, and then they end up regretting it, or they might have a kid and they regret it and it's a mistake, or
mm-hmm,
that person they sleep with them, then they leave them because they only wanted them for a certain reason, and the woman or man, whatever, feels depressed now because of it, and they go sleep with many other people because of that. It's like it creates so much turmoil that could just end if
yeah,
you got married early. I
yeah.
don't know if you
Well,
agree on that.
Well, I have a different perspective on it. I definitely agree though with like most of what you're saying in like its attribution to the issues of, what you're saying, like abortions, fatherless homes, like all those kinds of struggles. I think like the unhealthy culture in the West towards sex has a huge part in it, and how we view marriage also has a huge part in it. Because was it 50% of marriages end in divorce, right?
Yeah.
And I think a large a larger part has to do with lack of emotional intelligence, lack of maturity. I guess that's why people don't get married. I mean, for me, it's like a different reason, but like people who get married young, who aren't ready for marriage because they don't understand the responsibilities that come into it, the dynamics of a relationship within marriage. There's so much like ignorance, and that's why like so many of these marriages just fall apart. Like people just get married for the sake of getting married. They don't get married because like they're ready, and like they get into it and it's like, oh, I don't know who I am anymore in this marriage. I don't know how to function in this marriage. I think that's part of it, but I think a larger part is the fact that the way the economy affects people's ability to get married, and people's perception of marriage, because marriage is seen as like an economic, it has economic value, like on your taxes. It's cheaper to get married, right? But also the fact that like there's not enough support for families. There's not enough support financially. Like it's so hard to have a family. It's very expensive to have children. Even though if you want to have a child, you could go absolutely bankrupt having a child, because it's so difficult to have one and to raise one, and to raise one properly, you know, in like really good care. And so I think like I wish, especially like in the church, that there was a healthier view on marriage, and not just like this toxic purity culture, and it only focuses on that and not actually preparing you like, hey, you need to know who you are going into this marriage, and you need to know like what it's going to entail. You need to know what your responsibilities are. You need to know your life is going to be different. You need to know the significance of sex and what that means in marriage. But there's just too many people who don't do that. And it's just focused, at least in the Christian faith, it's just focusing on like, don't have sex, don't masturbate, don't do anything. And then it's like, once you get married, like, oh yeah, go ahead, have all the sex you want. It's like, but I thought it was bad for me this whole time. Like all of a sudden it's okay.
They should like promote marriage that way and say like, hey, you really want to do all these things, get married, like, and then you can do whatever you want. But if they're gonna just focus on the sexual part of it, then like I get what you're saying. Like you're gonna have this weird kind of vibe when you're married.
And it's so like it gets to the point where like, going back to like the whole fatherless thing, there's so many men who are not raised to value women, to value like their family. There's like
it's because of the sorry to cut you off, but I really go ahead. It's just because of the modern West. Like they put, you know, all these, they influence marriage, like you said, like they make it so hard to get married and stay married because there's just so much out there, and especially for men, you're seeing on social media, you see all these different women every day. You're out seeing all these women every day, and it's like, it's really tough, and it affects your marriage, and even for women. And then you get into, you know, there's pornography out there, and that really affects things, because you start losing interest in your own life, because you can look up anything you want on pornography. You can look this, that, and then you look at your wife and you're like, oh, well, you need to look better, and you need to work out, you need to do this, you need to do that. And it puts a lot of pressure on her to be like these fake women you're seeing on social media or whatever. And that hurts marriage. And this is all because modern West pushing these things out there. They make so much money off these images.
Right. And I think it's basically because, well, from my perspective anyway, it comes down to like toxic masculinity. I don't know if this is something that you agree with, but like the way that men view themselves and the way that men view each other and women, this is why like men like they aim to have a woman with like an impossible hourglass figure and to behave a certain way, like from what they've seen, and like from like how they see women through only the male gaze. And it's like, women are multidimensional, women are all different, and so like expect your wife or your girlfriend to only behave this way because you saw it on TV or in a movie. It's like it does go both ways, you know. it can, but it's mostly men who I mean, women are mostly portrayed through the male gaze anyway. Like you see like depictions of Megan Fox in Transformers, her and like her Daisy Dukes bending over a car, and she's supposed to know all about this car and be super feminine at the same time. But like women are not a monolith. Like women like are so different, and like we all should not be viewed like as only attractive through
No, I
that
agree with
lens.
that. Yeah. I
And
say,
but there,
yeah, sorry,
I was
but
just gonna say like too many men see that as the ideal, and then that's what they go for. And when they don't get it, or when they do get it, or they think they got it, and then she changes over time because people change. Um, Suddenly she's not desirable anymore. Or like if he's watching porn still and he's still expecting those kinds of things, like those expectations are still there and they're placed on her. And I know women, put a lot of expectations on men too, and it all like it's very toxic, and it's like
yeah.
it causes a lot of these problems.
Yeah, and I think they really do sexualize women, and they expect that's a huge issue. Of course, they sexualize women, and they make it seem like this is what your woman is supposed to be like, very sexual, showing off all these things, and it really is very toxic. But then also the women expect the man to provide, obviously, and they should, but it's very hard nowadays for a man to provide and everything. And women mainly look at, can this guy provide for me? Can he do this for me? And if he can't, you're low value. That's really the only thing they look at.
Yeah, I see problems with that too, because
Yeah,
a woman shouldn't have to like use that to define whether a man is worthy or not. Men are
exactly.
also not a monolith.
Yeah. So
And
there's that perspective too.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
also men nowadays, I'm a kind of, what they push out is men aren't just masculine anymore. I think it's
Yeah.
men need to be masculine. And when we talk about toxic masculinity,
Mm.
they say that men shouldn't be masculine. But to me, it's opposite. Men need to be masculine because that's what women need, as women want. They want someone.
What does that mean to you? Like masculinity, what does it mean? What does it
Masculinity
look like?
means, yeah, masculinity means you are a head of household, meaning you are responsible for everyone. It's not like you're the dictator there. You're just responsible for everyone in your house. You provide, you make sure their kids are provided for. You make sure your wife is
Mm-hmm.
provided for. You're taking care of the finances. You're in charge, and you make um, decisions. You're not going to be indecisive and, oh, this, that. That to me is um, could be unattractive to a woman. A guy can't even make a choice, right? So even if it's um, tough decision, you got to be firm in your decisions. And that's masculinity. Being able to fix things on your own, being able to handle situations, provide, be there for your wife, and show her love. You have to, there's a balance. You could be very strict and disciplined to your family, but you got to show them love as well. And I think this, especially with Muslims, we think a lot of them are just, oh, you gotta be strict, but they forget, like, our prophet always taught, it's a balance. You have to get things in order, but you have to show love even more. You have to show love to others so that they respect you. Because if you don't get
Mm.
respect from your kids or your wife and everything, the man,
Mm-hmm.
that's what man desires. We need more actually than love is respect. We want respect from, and when we don't get that, it reflects on everyone else. We start bashing the woman, we start bashing the man, I mean the kids, whatever, and it's a reverse effect. And you stop showing love to your woman. And when you stop showing love to the woman, that's what she desires. She wants to feel love. She wants to be the top of the pedestal. And you stop showing that, she's going to stop showing you respect. So it's a whole circle. And that's what, dissolves family units. But coming back to what
Mm.
masculinity is, I believe it's all that, and just being firm, being disciplined in yourself, self-discipline, being a head of a household, having skills, getting a job, uh, doing your best to provide, even if it's not enough. Do your best to provide, and don't don't be looking at porn. Don't be looking at another woman. Respect your wife, and don't fall into the norms of society. Be yourself and be the man that you're supposed to be. So that's my definition. Do you think that's in that masculinity man is toxic? Like they're not supposed to be like that?
Well, I only think it's toxic if the man can only see himself as doing that. Like if he has to feel that much pressure to only see his value through that. Like I would like to hope that I value my partner as who he is, for his kindness, for his love, for how he treats other people and how he treats me. But it doesn't necessarily have to mean that he's the best provider. Like he's trying. And I think like everything you said is totally valid. And I think like those are important, but I think the toxicity of it comes when it is the full pressure. Like you're not a man if you can't do all of those things. I think that's what I'm trying to say is like, if you can't fulfill all those things, then you're not a man. And I think that's toxic, because being a man, it's not just those things, even though they are important, if that makes sense. Right. The other side of it is like looking masculine. I like looking built, looking like you have a huge truck or like a super nice car. I think that's very toxic.
Yeah.
Like looks should not be something that, you know, men think that all women want. I promise you, like more women love the dad bod than anything else. Yes. That's just, yeah, the dad bod is here to stay. It's been here to stay for a very long time. So like I'm on TikTok quite a lot, and I see a wide range of women who just love the dad bod. It's just in. And it baffles men who are like, but I work out and I'm cut and like, you know, I care about the way I look. I have to be like super muscular. And women are like, no, like I'd rather you spend that time with me than working out. You know what I mean?
But yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I would say like at least be able to defend yourself and defend your family, because that's like, you know, I feel like a man's supposed to do that, you know.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah.
If you're focusing so much on your image, like, and you're just to try to be masculine, I think that's like the opposite. That's more like feeding into other people's perspective of you. And I feel
right.
like,
and I think that's why, like, it's the whole view of how like men view women, like they have to look a certain way. It's kind of, it ties into that same thing of like this expectation of men to also look a certain way. But it's like, but women don't need you to look like that. There are some who are like, oh, I need him to look this way. But like our bodies change over time. To have that kind of expectation on someone, that's very harmful. Because like, what if they get sick, or what if they're in an accident and they don't look like that anymore? Like, are you going to stay with that person? That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. And,
yeah. Like even if you're in an accident and you're not able to provide for your family because you're paralyzed or something, that shouldn't devalue you as a man or as a husband, right? Yeah. So that's why, like, I think those things are important, but they come in different ways. You can provide emotional support. You can provide that love that you said before. You can provide guidance. You can provide, you know, like wonderful memories for your family. And I think like men who only see themselves in like this one box, it's like, no, you are so much more than that. You like, you're your own human being, and you have so much more value than just these things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I can agree probably with most of that, all of that. Yeah, it is an issue when they put a lot of pressure on a man or a woman to do certain things. So yeah, I feel like if we just stick to what we're built for, you know, men being naturally just more stronger, masculine person, women being more feminine, nourisher, better with raising kids, better with loving and certain things, and just having a nice balance with each other. And it's really all it is. But society just puts so much pressure. You have to be like that. You have to be like this.
Yeah.
It's
and
especially with social media, you see it all the time, and you start like looking at your husband or whatever, and you're looking at your girl, and you're like, why can't you be like that? You know, look at her, and it's just like, it's so toxic. Yeah. It's really bad.
That happens a lot. It becomes like this. I don't know if you've heard of FOMO.
No.
It's an acronym for fear of missing out, and it permeates. It's basically what social media is based on. Is like the fear of missing out on this kind of relationship, or the fear of missing out on this kind of lifestyle or looking this way or having what have you. And I definitely, it's a hard thing to navigate through social media if you don't have that kind of discernment, like, oh, I can look at these things. You should be able to do that though. Like if you are a mentally strong enough person, sometimes it's really hard to like look at this stuff and say, I don't need that. I'm fine the way I am. Like I'm happy with who I am. Like I don't need to look like this, or I don't need my relationship to look like this. Like, plus it's always just the highlight reel. You don't see what's going on behind closed doors. People don't post everything.
Exactly. I feel like if you're firm in your like religion and you know what you need to do, you won't worry as much about that. But I get so I want to stay off my phone. I want to get off Instagram and Facebook and all this, but I keep finding myself picking it up and going back on it and just scrolling and then losing track of time. And
right. Well, I mean, part of it is like, at least for me, part of it is activism. You know, I like to be part of that community. Keep up to date with like, you know, what people are doing. My feed right now on Instagram is way more filled with Palestine stuff than it ever has been before. And I was like, wow, that's crazy.
That's the good thing about it. It's like if you use it in a good way.
But you get lost in the sauce sometimes.
I get lost in the sauce, definitely. And trying to stop that. I'm trying to just keep it to more positive and not get lost in it.
Yeah.
Really, it just affects me because I feel like I could have done so much other things and I didn't, especially when it comes time to spending time with family and I'm sitting on the couch on my phone. I'm like, dude, what did I just do? And I feel like, so I got to figure out a way to
balance that.
Yeah, distractions.
Yeah, because like you can be in the same room together, but you're not actually spending time together, right?
Yeah,
and I know some people see that as like part of, you know, their dynamic, and some people like that kind of thing, and it's not a detriment to their relationship. But for people like me, I need like one-on-one time. So you know, I know I need to stop with like so much social media.
Exactly. You know who I blame?
It's a rabbit hole.
Paul. It's all his fault.
Okay. I mean, I'm there with you.
I really need to wrap it up. I appreciate
this is a long conversation. Thank you.
We're I have to cut this up until like multiple
different parts,
which is good because now I have things to upload for like a while. So.
Oh, good. I'm glad I can provide content.
Yeah, you did. You provided a lot of content. The last one I put up, I don't know how I did it. It was an accident. I put it on an SD version, which is standard definition.
Oh, is that bad?
But it doesn't really matter, I guess, because it was just like Zoom calls, no like crazy graphics or anything. But I got to make sure I don't do that this time.
Okay. I know. Make us look good, Joseph. I mean, come on. Look at us. Definition. We look so good.
Yeah, that's why.
Representing the brown community. We have to, you know, represent
look good. Image is everything, right?
Yeah. It's the basis of our faith, right?
Exactly. Well, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it. It was really good.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll think about our next topic. We have a lot to talk about. So
I look forward to it.
Yeah, we'll look forward to it. Thank you and have a good night.
You too.
Well, bye-bye.
Bye.